Dirk Ahlborn. I'm the CEO of Hyperloop Transportation Technologies, and we're transforming transportation at the speed of sound. So, who here knows what the Hyperloop actually really is? I'm going to test you later. Well, for everybody else, we have a little video that shows how it all started, where we're now and where we're going. So enjoy.
America's always been a nation of doers. We build things, we take risks, and we believe that if you have a good idea and are willing to work hard enough, you can turn that idea into a successful business.
Billionaire philanthropist Elon Musk has hinted at a new high-speed transport system that could put planes and trains out of business.
I have a name for it, which is called the Hyperloop.
So what's Hyperloop? Mr. Musk's plan: move people using a massive vacuum tube combined with a magnetic levitation system. Kind of like a Jetsons tunnel?
It's something like that, yeah.
Here's how he teased the idea in May at an All Things D conference.
It's a cross between a Concorde and a railgun.
It's called the Hyperloop. It's a system of giant suspended tubes. Riding within are capsules carrying people or freight travelling on cushions of air at speeds of up to 1,200 k's per hour, or roughly 1 kilometre every 3 seconds.
A tube that would be on pillars from Los Angeles to San Francisco, and inside there would be capsule cars that would be rocketed forward up to 700 miles an hour, and that there would be a fan on the front. Elon Musk basically says that this is the way of the future.
How would you like something that can never crash? It is immune to weather. It goes 3 or 4 times faster than the sort of bullet train, and it would cost you much less than an air ticket.
It will only cost to build this $6 or $7 billion. Compare that to the $65 billion for the current high-speed rail plans for California. He believes this is a viable, valuable alternative for mass transit between these two destinations.
Could something like the Hyperloop actually be the answer to super-fast, environmentally friendly, high-speed travel between our busiest cities? So the gauntlet has been thrown down. A design document for a whole new, super-cool way to travel. The only thing now, will someone pick it up and make the Hyperloop a reality?
There are some companies that are forming to try to make the Hyperloop happen, and I encourage them. I think that's great. I'm super focused on Tesla and SpaceX, and to a small amount on Solar City. So that basically completely uses up my brain.
Tesla founder Elon Musk proposed this new technology called Hyperloop, and it's being developed right now in Playa Vista, here in this hangar behind me.
The only resistance would be the air in front of the capsule, which we move to the back by using a compressor.
Company Hyperloop has teamed up with the students to create this tube technology that's designed to connect cities up to 400 miles apart.
Dirk Ahlborn says it's safer and more efficient than the railroad.
Well, the system is completely computerized. So you optimize the system, and then you actually have the humans to monitor it. In railroads, most accidents were all human factors. Plus, a lot of the derailments are actually happened because something's on the track. So we're in a closed system. We're completely managed by a computer system. There's no human factor that can actually create those issues. We actually plan on seeing the first Hyperloop very, very soon starting.
Can you imagine and walk us through what it might be like to travel at the speed of sound?
It's not going to be much different than sitting in an airplane, actually. Obviously, for us, it's very important to make it as good of an experience as possible. So this is an independent organization that has formed. We have 170 engineers, scientists, and really great professionals with amazing backgrounds.
The race is on. Elon Musk's vision for a high-speed passenger pods known as the Hyperloop is one step closer to becoming reality this morning. One of the known companies competing to capitalize on Musk's proposal, announcing today it has struck a deal with landowners in Central California to build the first full-scale Hyperloop along a 5-mile stretch along I-5, with construction set to begin in 2016.
Let's bring in Dirk Ahlborn, who is the man who runs the Hyperloop Transportation Technologies team, which is announcing this deal with Quay Valley, California. Dirk, tell me about this deal and really when you expect this Hyperloop, this 5-mile stretch, to be finished.
Quay Valley is supposed to be breaking ground beginning of 2016. That's when we will be start working on our development. So We will be starting ground at the same time. At this moment, we expect to be done by 2018.
Hyperloop now appears one step closer to reality. Starting next year, that theory will turn into a groundbreaking in Quay Valley, Kings County off of I-5. A developer there has just committed a big chunk of his private land toward the project. It's a 5-mile loop that would take visitors through a planned entertainment district.
There's going to be a test track. Elon Musk has announced that he's going to build a small-scale test track. It's a necessary step for us to be building a full-scale version, and Quay Valley is a sustainable model town of the 21st century, so it's a perfect fit. They're expecting over 10 million visitors per year, so we will actually be able to generate revenues very, very fast.
The company plans to go public later this year.
We want to do a public offering. We want to give our community that's supporting us the possibility to own parts of the company. We want to make sure that the people that have been helping building the company and this technology are able to participate in the investment, in the fundraising, and the upside of the company.
With their contributions to Hyperloop, these students from around the world now have stock options in the company. But they say they're not in it for the money.
As a student, I start to feel like I'm in part of some great career that might change the world.
Will the Hyperloop kill the railroad?
The Hyperloop is going to do to the US what the railroads did in the 1800s. So it will change the way we live. It's possible today, it's based on existing technologies, and it's the right time, it's the right moment to finally get something doing like this.
Is it visionary? In 30 years' time, will you and I be sitting on our rocking chairs going, well, we talked about it then, and he did it?
Do you think this is possible? This is not just...
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
For all those who said this is just a neat little thing to draw on a cocktail napkin, these guys are saying it will become reality.
All right. So those were basically, almost 3 years put together in 4 or 5 minutes. So just to reiterate, what is a Hyperloop? So imagine a capsule filled with people hovering inside a tube and moving really, really fast from point A to point B. The capsule is levitating, so it's not touching anywhere. It's levitating through a passive magnetic levitation system, which was developed actually by Lawrence Livermore National Labs. So the system is completely different from anything you've seen before in terms of maglev. It's a passive system, so it doesn't need power along the track, which makes it much cheaper. But it's also much safer because there's, even in a failure, it continues levitating. It's a motion that makes it levitate. Safety is one of the main concerns, so we're actually continuously developing new things in order to make it the safest mode of transportation. It's roughly 10 times safer than an airplane right now. We have developed new materials. We have developed a material that we called vibranium, which is inspired, of course, by Captain America, right? The strongest material on Earth. But basically, what vibranium is, it's a composite material that has sensors embedded into it, which deliver data about structural integrity, pressure changes. And we have a double wall system where if one wall is damaged, we obviously know about it and we can take the capsule out of circulation, but you're still safe thanks to the other skin. Inside the tube, we create a low pressure environment. So basically, we take all the air out so that the capsule, very similar to an airplane that goes into high altitudes, can now travel very fast with very little energy. The system is on pylons, which has the advantage that we only need to buy the land for the pylons, so land acquisition costs are much less. It also has the advantage that you can still go from one side to the other. Earthquakes come up often. This allows us to integrate the latest earthquake technology, right, to compensate the movement of the Earth. And we're working on different concepts that allow us to create more capacity. So one tube can actually substitute air travel between Los Angeles and San Francisco 5 times. And we have 2. But we expect that people will be traveling more, so we're working on different concepts. This is a very early one, where we over-engineer the pylons so that you can add on several tubes. This is probably the most important part. It's green. It's powered by the sun. We use solar, we use wind, we use kinetic energy through regenerative braking, and depending on the climate, even geothermal. Now, why is this the most important part? It's not because, well, we all want to be green, but actually we're using alternative energy to produce more energy than we're using, which allows us to have very low operational costs. Okay. So when we did the feasibility study at the beginning, we didn't only do the engineering feasibility study, but also the economic feasibility study. And there's one thing as a business person, I think, that jumps out, and that's there's no rail line, no metro line in the whole world that's profitable. They're all losing money. So this concept, our product, can actually be profitable on something like Los Angeles to San Francisco within 8 years with a $30 ticket price in economy. Why should we do this? This is why. Traffic. And I've seen you have this in San Francisco too. It's not only an LA thing. Traffic is actually one of the biggest problems that we have. We spend a lot of time in traffic. We spend a lot of time, in the car or somewhere else. Time that we could be productive, time that we could be with someone we care about. Actually, traffic is so important that based on where we live, we decide where we work. Based on where we live, we decide we decide who we date. Because if he lives on the other side of the city, it might not work out, right? Then there's this. Traveling sucks. Once someone said that he enjoys traveling, but I think most people don't. You enjoy getting to the destination, but actually the process, I'm in the airplane a lot, and I think there's a lot of things that can be improved. Another reason, Beijing on a sunny day. On a bad day, you actually can't see the hand in front of your face. Now, a lot of people might think this is a problem that we have in China and India, but that's not true. Actually, all over the world, pollution kills people. So if you live in Europe, for example, your life gets shortened on average by 14 months. And it's not less in the US. Of course, transportation is only part of that, but I think it's an important reason to start working on that. I would love to get those 14 months back. Well, and then we have the railway companies, a dinosaur industry. We're building old infrastructure, very expensive, when we could build new ones, much cheaper. To give you an idea on what innovation means in railways and how innovative we are, this is a railroad track, like we're building it today. The distance between the two is 4 feet, 8.5. Anybody here know why? Nobody? Huh? Exactly, the Roman carriage. So basically, today, we're building new infrastructure based on the butts of 2 horses. When in real, if we would make them a little bit larger, we could move more goods faster and, more importantly, safer. And then there's a problem I was talking earlier. So we're actually losing money. So the Los Angeles Metro makes 76 cents per passenger, and $2.50 per passenger are coming from the government, from taxpayers. So now some people say, well, it's Los Angeles, nobody takes the metro, everybody drives. Correct. But the problem is actually a problem that we have everywhere. Even New York, okay, and I think everybody knows everybody takes the metro in New York. New York loses 82 cents per passenger, which makes $2.2 billion every single year. So subsidies for transportation in most of the world are a big part of the overall household budget. Germany spends something like, I think, for the railway structure, $22 billion. Euros, actually, which is even worse. But how would our lives be if we would have a Hyperloop? Well, airports is one big problem. They're overflowing. We're building more and more. They're, you know, if we would have a Hyperloop, we could actually connect them, and now all those airports would become terminals. We could build further out because, of course, we could be faster there. We talk about shipping. We could have goods that are coming from Asia within hours into Europe. On-demand delivery, of course. In most of the countries, you would be able to deliver within an hour. But I think this is the part that excites most people. You could live in one place and work in another. We could actually build, when we build satellite cities, so cities could be further out, 150 miles away. And you would still be in the city center within 10 minutes. I mean, I know San Francisco is not much different, but in LA, if you want to buy a house where you don't risk to get shot in the front yard, you have to spend at least $1 million. So here, it could actually be a real estate play which would pay for the whole system. All right, but how are we going to do this? So how are we doing it? Well, it turns out the technology is actually not the problem. We have the technology. We know how to build pylons, we know how to build tubes, we know how to create a vacuum inside a tube. This is a picture of the CERN Hadron Collider in Switzerland. And actually the company that's responsible for the vacuum, that's part of our team. We're betting on solar energy, which is a safe bet, because actually the development of alternative energy is similar to, if you want, so the chip. It's getting better every year and cheaper. But we're doing something else completely different. We're building a company in a different way. So I'm sure some of you might know these companies. They have something in common. They're all failures. And then there are these companies. And all of these companies have something in common as well. All of these companies, at one point of their history, incorporated something called crowdsourcing. Some of these companies have more than 50% of the innovation coming from the outside. So normally, when we talk about a train, a metro, or project similar, this is where it happens, behind closed doors. You hear they're planning something, maybe you hear how much it's going to cost, but that's it. You can't participate. So what we're doing is we call it crowdstorming. We work with a community, which is our community, but it's in general everybody. And well, people can join our team. They send us their ideas, but mostly we ask questions. Questions like, do we need a ticket? And not only do we need a paper ticket, but is a ticket the best way to monetize? Because if we can find a way that we make more money the more the passenger rides, then a ticket becomes negative. Then you would use a ticket only to regulate demand, right? So I always refer to the video game industry, for example. When I was a kid, I had to go and buy those video games that were super expensive, and today, most of them are free. But the video game company is actually making way more money than they used to. Or Facebook and Google, right? You're actually spending more time in transportation than on Facebook. But yet Facebook is making a lot of money, and the transportation companies need government subsidies. So that's something I think that we have to think about. I'm a lot in a plane, and I'm on there 14 hours. Nobody tries to entertain me while making money. So we work with a whole ecosystem. We partner with companies. We have collaborations with Lufthansa. We're doing collaboration right now with the German railways, several car companies, to really go in there and bring our technologies that we're developing and the ideas that we're developing into the market, to test them out even before the Hyperloop. Because the Hyperloop is not for us, it's not about moving a capsule inside a tube. It's about solving transportation. First and last mile issues. How do you get from the home to destination, right? There's a concept that I call the naked passenger, where it's all about being seamless and you don't need anything and you can just travel. Or even when we look at our business model, our business plan, and I see the cost. Pylons, of course, is a huge amount. Now, the last thing that we want to do is put billions of dollars of pylons around and don't do anything with it. So, you know, if I tell you, here, 200 pylons, they're yours, what are you going to do with it? It's just a question that is needed, because you get some crazy ideas and then you get some genius ideas. Things like, let's make them into beehives, or let's convert them into vertical gardens. Actually, there's a scientist in Slovakia that came up with a technology to store energy in those pylons. There can be electric car charging stations. Fraunhofer Institute in Germany has a technology that we're developing with them where we can produce water out of air with the same components that we're already using for the Hyperloop. So it's really questioning everything from the beginning. This is our chance to build a transportation system completely new and make sure it integrates with everything else. Because if it takes me an hour and a half to get to the station, you know, even if it takes me 36 minutes to get to LA, I might not use it several times a day. So we don't believe that we are the best ones in innovating. We work with our community. We create an ecosystem. So when we talk about digitalization of transportation, for example, we're working on, I don't want to say an app because it's much bigger than that, but there's a marketplace. And based on the data, who you are, where you're going, where will you be, companies can build solutions. Maybe it's a luggage delivery service when you come back home from an international flight. Maybe it's a dating service. But it's all about creating this ecosystem, because that guarantees innovation. Just like, you know, the App Store basically makes sure, and you actually buy your phone because of the amazing apps that are out there, not because of the amazing phone. That guarantees the innovation. So it doesn't depend on us. We're working a lot on passenger experience. So we really want to make things better. It's an important part. We have an air cleaning technology that's graphene-based. It's 100 times more efficient than what's out there right now. Because turns out one of the biggest problems people are having is that when they're on an airplane, they don't want to touch anything, right? There's bacteria everywhere. So with this technology, we're actually cleaning, we're killing bacteria, viruses, and smells. Think about a self-driving car. If the guy before you guys just had a burrito, right? Or ramen noodles. It's the same thing. But one of the problems that we're having is that we are inside a tube and people want to look out. So one of the technologies that we're working on, we call augmented windows. Actually, they're virtual windows and augmented windows. And virtual windows are just normal screens where we use head tracking to see where you're looking and simulate a real window. And then there's some technology for the multi-viewer, because of course every person needs to see a different image in there. So this is more or less how it's going to look. So if you've seen the image moves based on the facial recognition, for example. But the same we're doing actually with transparent screens, where you can be in a train and you get information of the outside, or eventually even in a car. All right, so why are we using crowdsourcing, and why are we working with crowdstorming and all in our different model? Well, everybody's talking about Elon Musk and the Hyperloop. Turns out it actually wasn't his idea. We've been talking about tube travel for quite some time. I think it was Jules Verne's son who wrote about it first in one of the books. And well, one of the first projects was actually in America. In 1870, there was a project in New York, before the New York subway, by the way. And their plan was to connect New York and San Francisco underground with a pneumatic tube. They built a station, they built an initial track, obviously never finished. Might have been a little bit early. But the first patent for a train inside a vacuum was done by Robert Goddard, one of the most renowned rocket scientists, in 1904. In 1969, the Secretary of Transportation of the US said in Popular Science that tube travel will change the way Americans live and travel. And actually they had two projects that they were financing. Then there were the Jetsons. In Switzerland in the 90s, there was a project called Swiss Metro. And Swiss Metro was actually very similar to what we're doing, but it was underground in tunnels, so very expensive, very large tunnels, and a large maglev train that was going in a low pressure environment. Technically feasible, I think they had most of the issues in cost. The Simpsons had the same idea. And then there was Elon Musk. So when Elon presented the idea and said that he was too busy with Tesla and SpaceX and he wanted someone to pick it up, I was part of a non-profit incubator that was funded by NASA. And we were in trouble because it didn't work. There were all these amazing incubators like Rocket Space, and then there was a small non-profit incubator that was very successful before, but of course with the commercial ones coming in, they were just struggling. So we came up with a completely new model. We created a platform called JumpStartFund, and the thought behind it was really a crowd-powered incubator. So we do everything online. You buy your groceries, you get your dry cleaning, you find your boyfriend, girlfriend online. You can even get divorced online in America. But when it comes to building a business, creating a company, it's you with a buddy and a beer in a bar, right? And you decide working on something and you go ahead. And 6 months later, you realize that nobody wants your product, or that maybe advertising wasn't the best way to monetize. That's actually the main issue right now in company creation. Lack of expertise and lack of insight. But now imagine if you have 50, 100, 500, 1,000 people that are passionate about the same things you are. Okay? Give you their honest opinion, something very difficult, their good ideas, their connections, you can build a better company. And that's exactly the concept here. So when Elon said that he didn't want to do it, we reached out, asked for permission to put it onto the platform, and asked the community, should we be working on this? And not only did they say, yes, you should do this, but they said, I want to be part of this. So we incorporate the company, got a small team together, and said, everybody who would like to join and work in exchange for stock options, please apply. We got around 200 applications, got a team together of approximately 100 engineers, and started working on the feasibility study. We finished the feasibility study at the end of 2014, and Yeah, I mean, today the company is over 800 people, 550 individuals, roughly in 50 companies. And, well, of course, after we finish the feasibility study, there's others now that are trying to do the same thing. So, which is great. Why I'm telling you this? Well, first of all, if you want to join, I want you to join the right company. But one of the things that we realized is that, remember the history? All those things that were tried? They all failed because they were depending on one company, on one country. So we realized that we had to build more than just a company. We had to build a movement. And that's, I think, what every company should do. You have to build a movement. You have your customers, you have the people that are passionate about the same thing you are. So one of the things that I learned during the whole process is that you should ask. So who here has a startup company? Just one. Oh, over there. Okay, awesome. So, you know, one of the things that when you talk to someone and you explain them your business, and they say, wow, that's amazing. The next thing should be, well, why don't you help me? And you would be surprised how many people are actually going to be like, yes, of course, how can I be part of this? And one of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to show people that you can build big things even without money. Okay, because until fairly recently, we didn't raise any money. We didn't need it to. We had over 600 accredited investors and venture firms come to us that wanted to give us money, but we weren't ready. We had all our team, we had resources from Microsoft and Amazon, all the programs, Autodesk sponsored us, Ansys sponsored us. We had all the manpower. We just wanted to make sure that what we're building actually makes sense before taking in anything. And of course to show, because you know, San Francisco is one thing, but when you're out in the world, one of the things that you hear continuously from companies like, oh, I can't raise any money. Personally, I think that money is not the most important thing. I actually believe that with less money, you build better products. Anyway, so right now, we have, as I said, I think the numbers change continuously, so I think 550 right now, individuals from all over the world. And these are not just a couple of guys in a chat room. These are people that are organized in teams, they're working a minimum of 10 hours, many actually do much more, and they have amazing backgrounds. So here are some of them.
I'm responsible for business development at Ahlborn Vacuum. I'm an educated economist.
I've been working in solar energy for 15 years now.
Program management, project management, and predominantly advisory for the Department of Defense.
I come out of the music industry, kind of mostly known as a saxophone player with Pink Floyd.
I currently teach at the University of Southern California.
I wrote a book about augmented reality for marketing and PR.
1 year at CERN and 3 months at Spotify. And right now I'm working at Facebook.
I work as a localization project manager.
I'm an Emmy award-winning producer, editor, director.
I'll be interning with Tesla Motors for the Thermal and Aero team next semester.
I work as a product manager at Cisco Systems.
All of my work is in the commercialization of innovation.
I'm a product manager at the Walt Disney Company.
I own a firm called Open Plan Consultants in Denver.
I currently own and operate my own private legal and business development consulting firm.
I am currently employed by Apple.
I've got over 40 years in surface transportation.
I'm currently a test engineer at SpaceX.
I'm currently the Chief Strategy Officer for Avetta Global.
We are the Hyperloop!
We are the Hyperloop.
We are the Hyperloop.
So just imagine how amazing it is to be the CEO of a company and knowing that your people will show up even if tomorrow you don't have any money, right? Because they are not motivated by money, they're motivated by passion. And, you know, they say the best people are already working for someone else, so in this way they can also work for us. In addition to this, we actually have roughly, as I said earlier, 50 companies. And you know, we have Oerlikon Leibold, well actually now Leibold Vacuum, they just changed the name. They're the inventor of the vacuum pump we saw earlier. Anonymous is one of the top 5 marketing firms in America. They do YouTube, Netflix, and Virgin America. Reflect, AR, VR, and many, many more. So we get 5 new applications every single day. So normally people struggle in this sector when they talk about rail, when you talk about, you know, a normal train, to get good talent. Well, we have people coming every day, and not only, I mean, do they want to work for us, they want to invest their time. So, and when they do the application, we ask them, what can you bring? And not only what can you bring as a person, but also can you bring some money, right? We never ask it for it at the end, but it's just an interesting indicator. And you know, some of these applications are super interesting. So here's some. So what we're trying to do, nobody has ever done before. And not only the Hyperloop, but even this whole model. And it's still not working perfectly in a lot of ways, but I can say that it's probably the easiest company I've ever built. Because it's amazing when you work with people that are so motivated. And we have artists, I mean, you saw one of the saxophone player of Pink Floyd. We have right now the top boy band on YouTube as part of our team. So we have artists, engineers, people come with their ideas and their skill sets, and you're able to work with the best people anywhere in the world. You don't have to work with a mediocre engineer somewhere because they know a little bit of everything. You can find someone who's very specific in the field. And there's a knowledge exchange, which is amazing, because we have students or young people that work alongside people that are retired, that nobody wants anymore, but of course they have amazing knowledge. So it's really exciting to see. All right, but when are we going to see the Hyperloop? So Quay Valley, we filed the building permits beginning of this year. We did the mapping and surveying of the land. We're now doing the environmental studies, and hopefully we start construction later this year. Quay Valley is a new town that they're going to build. We are right next to the I-5 freeway, so next time you go down to Los Angeles, hopefully we are on the site building. And Quay Valley is a model town of the 21st century. It's completely green, it's walkable, 100% solar powered, but it's also going to have an entertainment district. So there's going to be 3 resorts, a theme park, a shopping mall. So we're actually able to move roughly 10 million people a year. For us, it's not so much about speed here, it's about optimizing all the system, onboarding procedures, capsule handling. In addition, we signed an agreement with the country of Slovakia in Europe, the #1 country in Eastern Europe. There we're looking at a local transportation system with a vision of later connecting Bratislava and Vienna and Bratislava and Budapest. The exciting part here is actually that the biggest problem that you have on a project like this is regulation. So you know, the technology, as I explained, is already existing, but having governments backing you and wanting to work through this and fast track it because they want to innovate, they want to solve these issues, that's a real advantage that we're having here. In addition, I think we're right now in negotiations with 14 other countries, and I think we're going to add another 2 very soon. Unfortunately, the US is a little bit more complicated than the rest of the world. I would say Asia, the Middle East, Africa, Indonesia, India are kind of on the countries that are, you know, they have a problem right now that they need to solve, and we're there to solve it. This is what we say to all the naysayers that from the beginning were there and said, this is not doable, you can't do this. Of course, there are always things that you have to figure out. And but I think if someone says that you cannot do this, it just means that they haven't figured out how to do it. It doesn't mean that you can't figure it out. So, yeah, thank you. And let me know if you want to know anything more.
Thank you. Thank you, Dirk. Do you mind if we take some questions? No. All right. We got one.
2 questions. One, what's the infrastructure of all these people working together look like? Is there a core team? How do you kind of put out the task? And second, what about your personal experiences have made you the kind of leader that's so open to trying all these different strategies and getting others on board?
Okay, so the second question, sorry, was my personal. All right, so in terms of organization, we're learning, right? So at the beginning, we started out with 100, and then it became 200 and 300 pretty fast. And we kind of threw them all together, and we made a lot of errors. When there was a problem, we said, okay, engineers, here's a problem, try to solve it. Then we actually found out that you know, a team should be 3 to 7 people, not more. That's when they perform best. They're organized right now in teams. Every team has what we call, and I didn't choose a name, a hyper leader, and a hyper master. It's kind of like it's an inspired agile process that we're using inside those teams. We have developed a system where once a week they get kind of like a stand-up email where they answer what they've done, and they do the time reporting because of course they get their stock options in exchange. And then the whole team on Monday gets a copy of everybody what they said inside the team, so there's a little bit of peer control. On top of that now, so at the beginning we threw everybody just on the problems. Now they're organized, there's a structure, it's actually fairly corporate. And so you have the crowd on one end, which are, I think, over 40,000 people by now. And you have those core teams, and I think we have roughly 60 teams, so 70 teams, and the task team. And the task team is, they're working individually on specific tasks until we know that they're actually performing. And when they're performing, we add them or we create new teams. But it also depends if someone comes with a new idea or new technology, then they tell us, you know, someone, I don't remember. There was some completely new technologies that we're kicking off right now, where basically we tell them, okay, what do you need? You know, if it's about AI, what kind of skill sets do you need in the programming? And we give them those resources. In addition to that, of course, so far we were capable of managing mostly with the crowd. So our HR department is crowd, marketing is crowd, everything was crowd. Now it's getting more complicated. We have another 3,000 people that want to be onboarded. So for the last, I would say, 5-6 months, we have been kind of stuck and just said, okay, let's reorganize because we need to continue growing. The model works amazingly, but it needs to scale up even more so we can really use it. And now we're putting in full-time people, of course, because these teams need to manage this. It's a lot of work. And so you have like one engineer then full-time who's amplified by 1 or 2 teams, so he actually basically does a job of 5-6 people rather than just one. But he's the one responsible to move forward his task. Yeah, so for me, you know, I was just there at the beginning, I guess. You know, I was the founder, so my title. I'm not a fan of titles, so I see my job as like, this is what I have to do, and this is what the others have to do. You know, in my case, you know, I set the vision, I set maybe the directions, but we work a lot in teams, and we work a lot with everybody and their input. So it's really not me in any case, it's always the whole team. So you work with the best people possible, and it has been, I think the one thing that was the hardest for me, I had several companies before, and I was always able to tell people, do this. Now, doesn't work. So I tell them do this and they just don't do it. So you have to figure out to work in a completely different way because you need their buy-in, right? So they're there, they're investing their time. So if they don't believe that their time is invested well, they're not going to do it. And that's, I think, a different thing, complete different thing in management, right? Where you lose a little bit of time because kind of everybody thinks that they need to know everything. And then you have to tell them, you know, you don't need to know everything. You don't need to know the details of how the proportional the levitation system works. We need to protect our IP because at the end we're still a commercial company. But that actually, it works quite well. But, you know, keeping them engaged and keeping them continuously working, those are things that we're working on. And the tools, we're trying to build the tools so that everybody can do the same thing we have done. It's a methodology that we're creating, and you don't need JumpStartFund for it. It's really just, it's mostly a mindset. But what I can, as I said earlier, you know, this is the easiest company I've ever built, and it's amazing what you can achieve if you have all these people. You know, if you go to our office at 11, there's people there, and half of them are not getting paid. I mean, that's the amazing part.
Dirk, we have a question here from a startup presenter.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm particularly interested, it'll become clear later on when I get up on stage and talk, kind of a similar model we're working on. And I was wondering if you could comment on two things. One was how to compensate people when contributions are of varying degrees or people are, you know, contributing maybe part-time or full-time. How do you compensate or remunerate people for that? And maybe even a comment on the legal structure of the colony, if possible, and how do you actually build a company that doesn't necessarily have a legal framework where it can be totally open in this way, and how you've thought or solved that problem?
So we spent $600,000 in the last 3 months in legal. So we have a very much a legal structure. But so we have Paul Hastings, which is, you know, the #1 law firm in America, as our corporate lawyer. And in America, it's not so much a problem. The remuneration is by the hour. It's just like, you know, when you pay in cash. I mean, at the end, when you're giving stock options, you're giving them at the value the company's worth right now. So it's not really a payment, if you want so, but they and everybody else is creating more value. And we will have, I mean, the first valuation that we're going to get out on the market, I'm sure, because right now we kind of try to go around it. We'll have several millionaires in the company. So it's, you know, it's just like when you use money. And we also have several millionaires who, in my opinion, shouldn't be millionaires because they were maybe not tracked well enough. But you don't go there and have a discussion about their hours and what they produced. But you treat it just as money. You know, if you talk with someone, we have 2 levels, kind of, like one for senior engineering and one for the rest. And, you know, they give us their reports. The team knows how much they actually have worked. So that's we're trying to keep it very simple. Legally, the issue comes with every single country in the world. So if you work with China, right, we have Chinese people on our team and companies. So it's completely, stock options actually basically don't exist. So you have to create workarounds. If you work with Europe, it's the same. So that's where we spend a lot of money reviewing those contracts, making sure we're not going against security laws in all these countries. And, you know, but when you do something cutting edge, of course you're always on, I mean, any startup is on the razor edge of destruction all the time. So we just made sure right now that we're okay, that we're covered. So
we have time for one more question. Yeah.
So I'm gonna borrow off the two-question theme, which seems to be happening. One is, how do you bring in the regulator as part of this? I mean, it seems like, you know, a very, very nascent technology would be interesting in terms of how are you engaging with the appropriate government agencies. The second part is, what happens if you're claustrophobic? So what is the actual experience going to be, and what would people tolerate for 20 or 30 minutes?
So you saw go for the second question first. You saw the video earlier, so those windows actually work pretty good. They really give you the sense of looking outside of a window. And for us, it's a monetization strategy, right? So, because at the same time you have an experience, but you're going through Jurassic World or Terminator Land, and now they're paying actually the transportation company some money for that experience. In addition to that, we have some technology where we're simulating real-world light inside the cabin. So the problem is that right now all we can do is sunny. We'll be presenting that very soon, but that's one of the main things. I think that if someone is really, really claustrophobic, and meaning that they can't take an airplane, they will have the same problem with us. As far as regulators, they call us. So the whole thing about building a movement, that wasn't just talk. It's real. Like, I can show you Facebook messages where they're like, hey, you don't know me, but I would like you to meet the president of so-and-so, right? So, for example, president of Bulgaria and the mayor of Sofia. And then I flew to Bulgaria and met the president and the mayor. I had dinner with Putin and met Angela Merkel. And they reached out to us because, you know, when you create this wave, you know, and part of it is, of course, also the other companies and everything else, but at least from our end, it was really something wanted, because we wanted to be open. And when you build a movement, it's part of the movement that there's others trying to do the same thing. So, so far, we only hit open doors because everybody wants to look good, and you know, so wasn't an issue so far for us. We have so much inbound inbound demand that we don't have the time to reach out actively. I have a couple of heads of state that are still waiting to meet, and I don't know when, you know, so.
Me too. I have a few heads of state waiting to meet me as well. They're just calling me all the time.
Small countries.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.